As far as state's exhibits 117, 118, and 119, has the court made a determination about the admissibility of those items? Oh,
No. Anything else?
no.
Okay. You may proceed.
Thank you.
Oh, Judge Martinez?
Take a channel item.
Thank you. Officer Martinez, could you introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name for the court report?
I'm Joseph Martinez, Martinez.
And what do you do for a living?
I work for a laser engraving company.
For who, sir?
A laser engraving company.
And in 2019, where did you work?
I was working for the Bexar County Constable's Office,
In which precinct?
Precinct 2.
And who was the elected constable at that time?
Constable Michelle Barrientes Vela.
Do you see her in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
And what unit were you assigned to while on the working for the precinct 2 constable's office?
I was in charge of the traffic unit.
And so, what were your duties as a part of the traffic unit?
As the sergeant of the traffic unit, I was make sure our deputies were being safe, operating their units in proper manner, making sure policies and procedures are followed.
And while you were a member of the traffic unit, were you ever called out to a Family Dollar?
Yes, sir.
And why were you called out there?
We were called out because the constables saw one of her sons was accused of stealing from the store.
And what happened when you arrived?
I was there along with the rest of the traffic unit because of 4 of the deputies. The constables inside talking to the store personnel about her son, what was going on. There was 3 other deputies there that didn't need to be there. We didn't need to see what was going on. I believe Deputy Pena was taking the report, so myself and 2 other deputies exited the store.
Were you in charge of disciplinary write-ups involving any other deputies?
Yes.
And did you at any point ever write up Leo Moreno?
Yes.
And who would direct you or order you to write him up?
It was Lieutenant Minor coming from Constable.
I'm going to object there to speculation. I'll take him on board. I don't know how you
Take them over now.
So, Mr. Martinez, you said that it was Lieutenant Minor who directed you to write up Lenicio Moreno,
Correct.
and then you said that it was coming from the constable, but you don't know that it was coming from the constable. You know that it was coming from Minor because he's the one that told you to do it.
Through conversation with Lieutenant Minor, it was coming from a constable. It's his words.
All right, we object to your statement, Your Honor, for Lieutenant Minor. I mean, what Lieutenant Minor is directing him to, telling him is an out-of-court statement. In fact, they had Lieutenant Minor on the stand, they didn't ask him anything about it. And they never notified us that they were going to even talk about this.
Overruled.
Your Honor, overruled is the hearsay.
Yes.
And so during the time of Leo's tenure at the constable's office while you were there, what was his job duties? Where was he assigned?
He was a chief deputy at one point, then a lieutenant, then he was no longer with the constable's office, and then he was rehired, and then evaded securities when he was out of it.
Okay. And so while he was evading security, what was his job duties?
His job duties were the court security inside the courtrooms 1 and 2, the lobby security, and the entrance way.
And could you describe to the court what type of uniform you were required to wear as a member of the constable's office?
There was a navy blue, dark navy uniform top and bottom, similar to the one the Vedas are wearing, just different patches. That was our uniform.
And then while Leo Moreno was working court security as his bailiff duty, was he required to wear a different uniform?
Yes.
I checked cumulative on these uniforms. We've heard about
It's the
three
same.
differences.
Okay. Did you ever write up Leo Moreno for being late?
Yes.
How late was he?
A minute late.
And were you told that you had to write up Leo Moreno for being a minute late?
Yes.
Anytime that you see the attorney stand up and object, you gotta wait for him to rule on it. Same. Who else got written up for being a minute late? Who else did you personally write up for being a minute late, sir?
No one.
Is that because nobody was ever a minute late?
It's because others were treated differently.
I'm sorry,
Because others were treated differently?
others were treated differently?
Yes.
Move along.
Okay. So we'll fast forward. The training room at the constable's office. Do you remember the day that Leo Moreno was arrested?
Yes.
In that training room, what happened?
We were instructed, we were informed that a warrant was issued for the arrest of Leo Moreno. Excuse me. It was either Captain Garcia or the constable that broke us up into teams, two different two-man units, to go to several different locations to find Mr. Moreno.
And where were you ordered to go?
I was going to his house, his residence.
Was Constable Vela in the training room while this briefing was going on?
Yes.
Did you know the reason for the arrest of Leo Moreno?
He had a warrant for aggravated perjury.
Did you know what those charges stemmed from?
I initially understood they were stemming from the Tico incident, but I found out later that they were not from that.
What did you find out later they were for?
Objectives.
The same.
Pass the witness.
Mr. Martinez, I see you're not in uniform. You work for a laser engraving company. I guess you're no longer a police officer.
Correct.
Did you surrender your T-call?
No.
Do you still function as a reserve officer?
No.
Is your T-call still active?
Yes.
Okay. How do you keep it active without getting your hourly card?
Through Tico classes.
Okay. And how long have you been working for the engraving company?
2 years.
2 years?
2 years, yes.
And when did you start at the Bexar County Constable's office?
November 2014.
And you were a full-time deputy?
Yes, sir.
And when did you leave?
September 2019.
And you said you were in charge of disciplinary write-ups.
Yes.
Okay. Did you write up Susan Tristan for shredding documents?
No.
All right. So other people also did write-ups in the precinct?
Yes.
All right. So you weren't the only person that wrote up employees?
No.
Did you write up Michael Villanueva?
No.
All right. So the these other people, that could be people like Lieutenant Minor that were responsible for write-ups.
Yes.
They could be Captain Garcia.
Yes.
Right? It could be Chief Castillo.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't know if they ever wrote up anybody else for being a minute late because you didn't do it.
When I spoke about in charge of write-up, I was talking about were Moreno and De La Cerda, not any other officer or civilian in the office.
Maybe that wasn't clear. So you're saying you were in charge of writing up Moreno and De La Cerda.
Because under the chain of command, they fell under my section.
Okay. And you were over security at the time?
Over the court security, yes, sir.
All right. And you were also over, you said, the traffic unit?
Yes, sir.
So you don't know what I guess what I'm saying then is that you have people that you're responsible for, and you would write them up.
Correct.
But there are other people that other administration is responsible for, other employees, and they would write them up.
Correct.
And you don't know what they wrote them up for.
Correct.
Okay. So other people there at the constable's office could have been written up for being a minute late, and you wouldn't know about it if it didn't fall into your direction.
Yes.
And at the time, Moreno and De La Cerda that we're talking about, they were the two deputies assigned to security.
Yes.
Okay. Were you, since that was your, I guess your area of responsibility, were you aware that Moreno had been misusing FMLA?
No.
Okay. So they didn't tell you about that?
No, they didn't.
And when Moreno would call in 10 minutes before his shift started, would he call in to you sick?
Yes.
Okay. So you're aware that he was doing this?
He would use FMLA. He was calling and using FMLA.
Okay, you just didn't see it as abuse.
No, I guess not.
All right. You would agree that when somebody calls in 10 minutes before their shift starts to say that they're sick, that causes the precinct to have to use other people to cover that shift.
Yes.
All right. You would agree that Moreno did that often?
Often, yes.
Okay. So the court security specifically, when you were over court security, that was you said both courtrooms that were there, right?
Yes.
And the lobby area was part of Precinct 2's responsibility
Correct.
for security.
Yes, sir.
And so really it was securing the complex as a whole, which is what Precinct 2 was supposed to do.
Yes, sir.
I guess a lot like the Bexar County Sheriff's Office is responsible for security in this one, right?
Yes.
You said you were instructed to go to Moreno's home,
Yes.
and then after the briefing, who gave the briefing anything that we're talking about?
I believe the constable was in there present. I know definitely Captain Garcia was there, Lieutenant Minor, myself, and then the rest of the deputies.
I didn't say who was present for it. I said who gave it.
The constable and Mark Garcia.
Okay. And they told you that Moreno had a warrant out for his arrest.
Yes.
Okay. And that was true.
Yes.
A warrant had been signed.
Yes.
Did you know that Mark Garcia had taken that warrant to get signed?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that Constable Vela specifically directed you to go to this person's home?
It might have been her or Captain Garcia.
So you don't know?
I don't recall which one it was.
Okay. Had you been in briefings before where you had to serve a warrant?
Yes.
Okay. So if there was a warrant that had to be served or executed, then a briefing would be the way that officers are informed about what it is.
If time permits, yes.
If time permits. Did you have a copy of the warrant yourself when you went to execute it?
No, I do not.
And it's true that you told, when you were questioned by Ranger Freeman, you told him that you were upset at the constable and at the precinct because you had not been promoted. Do you remember saying that?
Jefferson Brothers, calls for your
Justifies.
proper impeachment.
Justifies.
Call the roll.
Yes.
And you actually walked off your job after you were given a second chance. You walked off your job at precinct 2.
Yes.
And at one point you drove by the constable and screamed "you bitches" at her out the window, didn't you?
No.
You never did that?
No.
You don't remember doing that at all? Under oath?
Because I didn't do it.
All right. You never screamed that at him? You remember driving by and screaming something at him?
At who? At,
The constable.
say that again? What I say?
The constable. You bitches.
No. Probably. No.
You don't remember screaming anything?
No.
So you were there when Moreno got fired for lying on his T-call?
I was employed, yes.
You were employed at the precinct?
Yes.
And you knew that happened?
Yes.
Because you testified to it on direct.
Yes.
And so, and you knew that T-call had sustained those findings and put a permanent mark on Moreno's record for lying about his training on the T-call.
I later found out, yes.
And then you knew he was fired for that and then reinstated in his job.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
No further questions, Judge.
Can you step down?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you, sir. Step down.
Yes, just prior to that, we wanted to inform the court, also inform defense counsel that based on testimony yesterday and also our intent to admit certain pieces of evidence, we have come to the discussion until here in the stateside that we anticipate that at some point, probably tomorrow, we will call Mark Garcia to the stand. And we just want to inform the court and inform defense counsel. He is on our witness list, but we just wanted to make sure that the court's aware of that.
Okay. Have all your witnesses at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
State call is Manuel Gonzalez.
Get it right up on the mic. Yeah. Right up the mic and speak about it.
Mr. Gonzalez, you testified in the guilt and innocence, right?
Yes.
Okay. You're recommended to say both. Thank you. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just finding a couple of items. refresh everybody's memory, what is your job title?
Human Resources Director for Bear County.
I'm not going to keep you on the stand too long. We're just going to talk about just a couple of issues. Your Honor, what is our next number? Is it 115?
No, 120.
120? May I approach the witness?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to hand you what's marked as State's Exhibit 120. Do you recognize that document?
Yes,
And just as a general description, what is that document?
this is a memo to file.
And are you the author of that memo?
Yes,
And what is it dated?
February 4th, 2019.
And what is the subject matter?
A call from Leonicio Moreno on leave.
The state would move to admit State's Exhibit 120.
Here's a-
Pearson is overruled. Pearson is overruled. State's 120 is admitted.
Judge, may I push the screen?
Yes.
So what is this document memorializing?
It was an interaction with Mr. Moreno as well as the constable's office.
So how did the interaction begin?
It began with a call from Leonicio Moreno asking about some leave benefits.
And did you have a conversation about his leave benefits with him?
Yes,
And during that phone call, did he express any concern about needing to get off the phone?
yes, he was receiving another call that he knew was from the constable's office.
And did you complete your phone call with him?
I did.
And did you describe to his satisfaction the answers that he needed regarding that call?
Yes,
And based on that call, did you subsequently make a decision to make another phone call?
I did.
And what was that phone call, what was the purpose for that phone call?
It was to inform the constable's office that while they were attempting to reach Mr. Moreno, I was on the phone with him.
And so were you able to reach the constable's office?
Initially, I left a voice message, but I received a follow-up phone call.
And who did you receive the follow-up phone call from?
It was Chief Deputy Castillo as well as Constable Vela.
And so they were both on the call with you?
Yes,
And they identified themselves?
they did.
And what were you asked any questions?
Yes, it was yes.
And who was it asking you questions?
It was between Chief Castillo and Constable Vela.
And was it related to your previous phone call with Leo Moreno?
Yes.
And what was the conversation regarding about that phone call?
I actually shared, because the voicemail that I had left, so this was follow-up from that. The voicemail that I had left was to inform them that I was on I was on the phone with Mr. Moreno when they were attempting to contact him.
And did you relate to them any emotional state that Leo Moreno exhibited while on that call with you?
Yes, I used the word anxious.
And when you used the word anxious, what were you referring to?
He was anxious to take their call, but mine was close to the end.
Did you subsequently receive another call related that day that you noted in State's Exhibit 120?
Yes.
Dice.
Yeah. I got the camera
Upside down.
upside down.
Do it one more.
Oh, where we go?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm placing on the television monitor State's Exhibit 120. And it appears that you've noted numerous times of different things that occurred related to that phone call and the subsequent activity afterwards. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you've actually documented your conversation with Chief Castillo and Constable Vela, that conversation you were just speaking about.
Correct.
And also, you received another phone call later on, and it states here in State's Exhibit 120, Irma Moreno, the spouse of Leo Moreno. And what was that related to?
It was her concerns with the interaction.
All this about Irma Moreno, I know you overruled the hearsay objection, but this is why we object to the hearsay. I mean, she is, like, this is somebody that we can't cross-examine. They're not calling to the stand. And it's just her concerns and questions or whatever that came into him. I understand that it's an evidence, but I'd like the court to reconsider it too.
I'd like to reconsider it.
Was there an incident later that afternoon at Mr. Moreno's residence?
Yes.
And is that what Ms. Moreno was calling about?
Yes.
And based on this document, in your recollection of what had occurred, what did occur?
I'm sorry. Mr. Moreno was visited.
Your Honor, we at least have a running objection to all hearsay throughout.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Moreno's interaction with the constables and the constable staff
And this took place at the residence?
at his residence.
And at that point in time, did he have to surrender something to them?
Yes.
And what was that?
His firearm.
I'm going to refer to State's Exhibit 97 already in evidence. This is an EEOC complaint, charge of discrimination, retaliation, dated March 18, 2019. It's a sworn affidavit of Constable Vela. It's related to the EEOC complaint that Mr. Moreno had filed. At any time during your conversation with Constable Vela, did you ever relate to her that Mr. Moreno, while on the phone with you, exhibited high levels of stress?
No.
And did you ever indicate in any way to her that he had somehow had an unstable mental state or was not well?
No.
And did you ever indicate to her that perhaps his weapon should be retrieved?
No.
I'm going to refer to State's Exhibit 98, which is already in evidence. It's a document referred to as Written Order for Fitness Duty Evaluation. It actually has attention Manuel Gonzalez. Do requests for fitness of duty come through your department?
Yes.
And explain that process.
There has to be evidence or a history, evidence of a need for a fit for duty. And there are two types. It would be behavioral or it would be physical. And so the civil service rules detail that when a fit for duty request meets those criteria under the civil service rules, that HR would respond with a list of providers that the individual could go to.
I'm going to hand you what's marked at State's Exhibit 98, which is that fitness for duty evaluation. And I know you've previously looked at a copy. Had you ever received that fitness for duty evaluation in the HR department?
No.
And this is a 3-page document. Based on that document, do you see how the content includes some of those civil service requirements? For a fitness of duty evaluation to occur? In other words, do you recognize any of the language in this document?
I do.
And what is it that you recognize about this document?
I recognize some of the components look to be from some of what are written as the sheriff standards.
And in this document, it's requesting that when an officer shows signs of high stress or anxiety levels, it becomes a concern, and that is the reason for and the purpose for a fitness of duty evaluation. However, you had stated that your phone call interaction with Leo Moreno would not have been any source of information related to high stress or anxiety levels?
Correct.
If you'll turn to the last page of the document, it's referring to the February 4th, 2019 phone call. And it appears to be the basis of a request for psychological evaluation. Based on you being the person who received that phone call, would you believe that would support a fitness for duty evaluation for a psychological examination or evaluation?
No.
And perhaps if it had occurred, would you be the person who would express the concern since you were the one who received the phone call? How does that work?
Someone can contribute. In my case, it's my phone call being referenced. I didn't make these contributions.
Pass witness. Oh, the witness would be this. These are both the names, sorry.
Gonzalez, how long have you been in HR for Berry County?
8 years.
And before that, were you anywhere else?
Yes.
Where?
Southside ISD.
Was that also in an HR position?
Yes.
And how long were you there?
2 years.
And then before that,
Alamo Colleges.
same HR?
Yes. Excuse me. I was at Our Lady of the Lake University before that.
Okay. And how long were you there?
3 years.
And then Alamo Colleges before that?
A little over 7 years.
Okay. Was that your, Alamo Colleges, was that your first HR position?
Yes.
17, 18, 20. Basically 20 years in the HR.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, in addition to the phone call, you also had email communications with the constable's office about Deputy Moreno, correct?
Yes.
And it was discussed that the main concern that they had was that Moreno had been abusing the FMLA. You remember being aware of that?
I remember that claim being made.
Right, and then backed up by the fact that he would call in sick or say that he was sick, and he'd be seen out at HEB shopping, or he'd be seen in other locations. Definitely not home and sick.
I'm sorry, I don't know about that.
Okay. But you agree that abuse of FMLA is a problem.
I imagine. I don't know what that is. Abuse of FMLA isn't defining.
Claiming FMLA when you're not entitled to it, or when you're faking sick. Faking sick is a problem. You would agree with that?
Yes.
I mean, Bear County HR, I was here when you were here. I mean, if we faked sick and called in sick and faked it, then HR would have a problem with that, I imagine.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
Being dishonest about taking leave, that's a problem for people in your profession.
Yes.
Okay. And you were made aware that Moreno had been, I guess you're saying alleged to have, but you've been aware that he was alleged to have been faking sick and taking FMLA when he was not entitled to.
Yes, the claim was made.
Right. And what investigation did you do in that claim?
We don't.
Okay. So you had a Bear County employee. It was told to you that he was improperly taking leave or that he was faking, and you didn't do an investigation.
Correct.
Okay. So because the document that you were reading, I guess your memorandum that was entered into evidence, I think 120. One of the issues, I guess, that he had called you to talk to you about was he was upset that his sick time was being questioned regularly.
That was not that day, that call.
How many times did he call you?
That day?
I'm asking that day. That's the only one.
Do you have the memorandum? It's okay.
Oh, thank you.
On this memo that we talked about, that states Exhibit 120, what does number 3 say?
Called to sheriff following an early morning meeting with SAPD. He called.
Number 3. What does number 3 say right here?
Sick leave is questioned regularly.
Okay. And you said he didn't talk to you about that on that phone call, right? But you have it on this memo for February 4th, 2019.
So the way that memo is listed is all of the topics for that day related to Mr. Moreno. That topic was brought up by his spouse.
Okay. So it was brought up by his spouse, but you were aware, I guess, and we'll redo that. Thank you for correcting. Well, you were aware that that was one of the complaints that either him or his spouse had about what was going on at precinct 2.
I was aware, yes.
And not counting that day, how many times had Moreno called you and spoke to you about this?
I don't know. I don't recall.
More than once?
Yes.
More than twice?
I don't know. I don't recall.
I mean, so he, I guess, is that common that employees call you directly at HR and talk to you about problems that they have?
Yes.
Okay. And you, at the time, you knew that there was an allegation by his supervisors that he was abusing FMLA. Did you counsel him about that?
No.
I mean, because you put it in the memo as if it were important for your duties. It's one of the 3 things that you listed. But you didn't address it with him at all. The allegations that were made or any of the things that you may have said to his supervisors about the fact that they had made those allegations. You didn't talk to him about that.
No.
It wasn't important to you to talk to him about that.
Important. That's a difficult thing to answer back to.
Understand.
That's not how this works.
Okay. And I do confess, the only time I've spent with HR is when I get called into HR for some reason. But my point is that to me, and maybe I'm wrong about what you do, but my idea of HR is that HR for a company or a county, as you are, would be concerned with somebody faking like they're sick and draining county resources based upon that.
We would move forward on an investigation with evidence.
Well,
And that is not what I received.
Okay, but you did receive from Lieutenant Minor a calendar that had various times that he had taken sick or that he was called in sick, and kind of plotting out why they believed that this was an abuse based upon those things. You received something like that in an email.
But if the leave was FMLA, that's protected time.
I know, and that's the running theme throughout this, is that they have figured out that you guys won't question if they do something federal, you won't question if they lie about it. But my question to you is it is protected time, but if they're lying or they're using protected time and abusing it in a way by lying about it. If I was still working for Bear County and I said, my leg is broken, I can't come to work, and then you see me and I'm running in a marathon, right? And I take an FMLA, does that mean I'm just completely immune from you investigating this?
We would investigate, especially if you come to us with evidence that they were in a marathon.
Like you see it. You, Mr. Gonzalez, is like, you're like, that's Jason Goss running a marathon. He's got an FMLA thing that we have in Bear County HR that says that he can't come to work because his leg is broken. But you wouldn't say FMLA is protected. I can't do anything about it, right? You would investigate it, right?
And that's not what happened.
I understand that you were brought evidence. You were brought a pattern of calling in, as well as documentation that it was suspect in the way that because they were seen out in the public. You were brought that. You were given that information in an email. They talked to you about it and said, "Hey, this is what this guy is doing." You don't recall that?
I don't recall ever receiving evidence. If I received a calendar, someone's absences, if they're FMLA, they're protected time.
I understand it. You see how that leads to abuse of the system. As long as you say FMLA, it's ollie oxen free. And then Mr. Gonzalez at HR Bear County won't ever investigate you because he believes it is protected time. I mean, the only evidence, you would agree that the only evidence somebody can have is they can say, look, he's always calling in on the same pattern, and that's what the calendar did. It said his FMLA time is always taken to when he has a 3-day weekend. And that's suspect because as a pattern, when you're creating 3-day weekends for yourself, and that's the only time you're taking FMLA, that's the stuff that was provided to you. As well as, I have personally observed him when he said he was sick, not sick, out in public, going about his duty or going about whatever he wanted to do. Don't you agree that those things are enough at least to have HR look at it, that you didn't because it was protected? Is that what you're testifying?
I'm testifying that that is not what happened.
Well, what I'm saying is,
Even if I were given the calendar, that's just not what happened.
but if you were given the calendar that showed that it was a pattern of 3-day and 4-day weekends that the FMLA time was taken, I mean, it is or it isn't. I mean, Lieutenant Minor testified on the stand that that's what part of their investigation was, and that's what he was doing. And so you're saying it's not what happened. I mean, are you saying that you investigated it and you said, actually, he didn't take off and give himself 3 and 4-day weekends?
Part of the process for FMLA is to have a healthcare provider certify the time off, the protected time.
Understood. And so,
If we understand that process, that time off was protected. It met the criteria.
and so, someone who has a friendly doctor can, who is willing to say, you know, for instance, Dr. Montoniers, right? Okay, I'm going to write you a FMLA. What you're saying is that puts a shield, just like EEOC apparently, it's a shield that goes down and protects anybody from lying about it, from ever being caught lying. Because you're not going to investigate it as Bear County.
The risk isn't with the employer, it would be with the certifying medical provider.
Right, but I mean, in the meantime, you have an employee that's not showing up for work, and you have a system now that is strained in a precinct, or a DA's office, or a sheriff's office, or all of these things that are underneath your purview. You have people who are, if they're abusing the system, that means that the system has to put on and take extra time and extra energy and extra resources to cover that abuse. And if you continue, and if you allow it to continue to happen across all of these different agencies that you're over, then you would agree with me that that can become a major strain on the budget and on the resources of Bear County.
It's a possibility abuse could affect the employer.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you know, and it affects the supervisors, right? You have to figure out how to cover for these people who are doing it, right?
Sure. Yes.
So, you said that in this phone call that you were talking about, you said that when you called, so you wanted to call and say, I was on the phone with Deputy Moreno when you were trying to call him. That was the purpose of it.
Correct.
But you also said that you said he was anxious, right? You said that he was anxious.
Correct.
Okay. And what you're saying is, and I feel like that's what this whole case is. It's like a telephone game. So you said he's anxious, and what you meant by that is what you're saying. What I meant when I was trying to communicate that to them was that he was anxious because he couldn't answer your phone call because he was talking to me.
Correct.
Am I right? But as HR and as a representative of HR, what you're saying is that he has, I guess he had anxiety when he was on the phone with you.
No.
Well, that's what that is. If you're saying he's anxious, that means he has anxiety.
No.
Okay, let's go to like basic definitional here. If I am anxious about something, I have anxiety about something. Correct?
Anxiety as a medical term is not something I have the ability to prescribe. His anxiousness to take someone's call was why I called the office to validate that he was on the phone with me.
Because he was upset and you knew that he was.
No,
Well, if you're going like, I need to call them and let them know because he is talking to you going, they're trying to call me right now. And obviously he's portraying that he's anxious about it because I'm just taking your words. That's what you said, that he's anxious.
you're changing my words.
I'm taking them exactly as you said.
Okay.
Okay.
Then he wanted to pick up the phone while he was on the phone with me. And my resolution was, give me a chance to call the office to inform them you're on the phone with me.
Okay. And he was calling the entire time.
There was anxiousness there.
And anxiousness to you is not anxiety.
No, he was anxious to get the call. He wasn't anxious on the phone on every word that we were having a discussion over.
Well, here's my point though, is that whatever it was, you felt like he was under some sort of anxiousness about this situation
To pick up the other line.
that you needed to call and straighten that out for him, right?
That's what I did.
Well, I know, and you felt the need to do it based upon how he was talking to you on the phone, right?
That's what I did.
I mean, I'm just taking the thing that you did and I'm just going backwards and saying, if you did this thing, you must have been hearing something or experiencing something from him to make you believe that you needed to call and do that thing.
That's what I did.
Right. So, for instance, if Judge Mesa had me in here and I have to be in another courtroom, and I'm going to her and saying, look, this judge is really upset with me. He's mad. I need to, and she says, look, I'll call over there and I'll make sure that they know that you're here and that's why you were late or that's why you're not over there in their courtroom. Right? I mean, that's basically what you did. That was the scenario that was happening. You were talking to him. He was anxious about the fact that he couldn't answer this other call, and you communicated to him that you'll help smooth or straighten that out with the constable's office.
Right.
Okay. So it was important to you to communicate to them that he was anxious, that was his mood, that was his feelings, that was what was going on, because you could have just said, hi, it's Maynard Gonzalez. I was just calling to let you know that he couldn't answer your call because I was on the phone with him. Thank you. Have a nice day. Right? You could have said that.
Right.
But you said he's anxious. Whatever that means to you. He was anxious about not being able to answer this call, and so you also added in his mental state or his emotional state that you felt like, based upon your conversation with him, that you were qualified to talk to them about or to tell them about.
That wasn't the direction I went. Just said that he seemed anxious to take your call, but I asked him to stay on the line with me so that we could wrap up our call and that I would follow up.
Right. And so what I'm saying is that to you, anxious apparently meant, I guess, excited or...
Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to say that I object because this has been asked and answered.
To you, I'm just trying to figure this out because what happened is you told them like, hey, look, this guy's anxious about taking your call or whatever else, and you had in your mind what you thought that meant. But I'm still, when you're saying it, I'm still trying to figure out, you mean that you were trying to communicate to them that he was excited, he really wanted to take your call. Is that what you meant by that? Like he wanted to take your call, but I was on the phone with him and I told him to wait for you.
That's what happened.
I'm asking if that's what you meant by anxious.
There's nothing else there. It's just literally that I called as a follow-up to inform them he was going to take your call, but we were focused on finishing our call.
It's because he thought he was going to get in trouble for not taking your call, and he told you that.
I don't know.
Well, he told you that.
I don't know.
I'm asking.
I don't recall him telling me that.
But but you are behaving as if your behavior suggests that you felt like you needed to make sure that they knew why he couldn't take their call.
I would do that for any employee.
I understand that, but it was because it was verbalized to you that he felt like he was going to be a problem for him. And you said, and you would do that for any employee, but he felt like it'd be a problem for him that you made him stay on the phone and he couldn't take his call from his supervisor.
I don't recall that.
But don't your actions suggest that? You know yourself. That's why you would have done that.
That was my point in saying I would do that for any employee.
Sure, because you're keeping them on the phone while their supervisor calls. Because it's your fault that they couldn't answer the call.
That's what happened.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you were being told that that was your fault, that he couldn't answer the call, or something like that. That's what was happening in the conversation you had with Moreno.
I don't recall Mr. Moreno expressing any of that.
So, I mean...
He just said, I see them calling. I said, hang in there. We're almost done.
And he was calling because he was complaining to you.
He was asking about benefits.
His wife was complaining.
Correct. His wife had a complaint.
Okay. And in your... So in your memo, do you have it up there with you?
No.
I gave it up to you. In your memo, on number 2, you included the 2419 visit by 6 patrol units. That was also his wife that was I guess, complaining to you. Is that where that came from?
Yes.
And you talked about when a weapon should be retrieved. You commonly consult the sheriff on when he needs to retrieve a weapon from one of his deputies.
No.
That's completely his purview, right?
Correct.
And that's not something that HR says, Sheriff, you must let me, Manuel Gonzalez, know when you're going to go get a gun from one of your deputies.
Right, that doesn't happen.
Right. Because that would be silly, because you would know when somebody should have their gun taken away from them.
That's not what we do.
That's not what you do. As far as fitness for duty, you said that there are two things, behavioral or physical. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Its ending outcome is the type of provider that we would give.
So but when you say behavioral, what are you talking about? What are examples of that?
If there were patterns of behavior that were an anomaly, we would seek a psychologist, as an example, as one of the providers who might respond to a fit for duty.
Okay. But could those be, I mean, when we talk about examples of behavior that's an anomaly, and I'm just talking in general terms, what are we talking about? Because I genuinely don't know.
So if an employee were to say that their reasons for spending so much time in a restroom are because they hear whispers at their desk.
Okay. Like, and then physical, like what's an example of that? Like an assault at the workplace or like their physical appearance?
Let's say an employee has difficulty getting in and out of a vehicle.
Okay. So like an actual injury or some problem with their body, or like they're afraid of vehicles and they can't get in and out.
No, that would be if they just had difficulty getting in and out of a vehicle.
Understood. So a pattern of calling in sick to give yourself 3 or 4 day weekends, would that be considered behavioral or a behavioral issue?
It could,
If you weren't sick, but you were just calling in sick?
correct.
Okay. And I guess you mentioned when an officer shows signs of high stress or anxiety levels, right? That was mentioned on the direct side.
It was mentioned on the fit for duty, not my memo.
Okay, sure. So, and we'll talk about, I mean, we're kind of talking about fitness for duty right now anyway, with those two, behavioral, physical, all those. But going to high stress or anxiety levels, right? You would agree that that's kind of subjective.
It is.
I mean, you know, what you may think is somebody's high stress, I may not think that's high stress, and vice versa, right?
Right.
High anxiety, your definition of high, what I mean is there's not like an objective metric that somebody can use to say whether or not the anxiety level is high or not high, right?
I don't have that answer.
Well, you do have the answer in the sense that you're in HR and you consult a chart. If you listen to what the behavior is, consult a chart and figure out this qualifies as high, or it qualifies as medium, or it qualifies as low anxiety.
We would consult a healthcare provider.
During the fitness for duty, that would be during the evaluation.
If we started a fit for duty.
Correct. So my point is when somebody is referred for fit for duty, whether or not it is high anxiety or medium anxiety or low anxiety, that is subjective until there's a healthcare provider during the fitness for duty or fit for duty process that says, no, I don't think that that's high anxiety. But before that, a bunch of people who aren't doctors like you and like the agencies and whatever else, that's kind of subjective up to them. You would agree with that?
Yes.
I mean, you know, somebody's got anxiety and, well, I think it's high, so I'll refer you to fit for duty, and then a consultant, a healthcare provider's consulted, and they go, no, it's not an issue. Then that settles that issue, right?
Right.
Okay. But the issue's not settled beforehand. Because I guess what they're trying to do is say, no, everybody should know what high anxiety and high stress is based upon the conversation with you before the fitness for duty evaluation. And that's just not possible to know until they talk to a healthcare provider.
That's a possibility, yes. That's not what happened.
I know what you're saying. It's not what happened, but you are saying I told them that he was anxious,
Right.
and I didn't mean that he had high levels of anxiety. But you're saying and because I didn't mean that, then nobody should ever take it as that because I didn't mean it, right? That it's completely unreasonable for anybody to ever take it as that, even though I made it a point to say that he was anxious about talking to you. Not you, her, or somebody from the precinct. You made that a point to say that he was anxious, correct?
I did say he was anxious to take their call.
Right. And you agree that whether it's high or not levels of anxiety, that is subjective until a healthcare provider can evaluate it.
Right.
Okay. And you also agree that with the call, in addition to other observations that are made about this person, those can also play into why they would request fit for duty evaluation.
Yes, but that's not what was in that memo.
I understand that that's not what's stated, but we've heard testimony about it. And so what I'm saying is that whether or not it's in the thing, we've heard testimony that this person has been a disruption, has been calling in sick, has been giving himself 4-day weekends, and then is talking to HR and has anxiety about taking the call for the constable, or is anxious about it, because you used the word anxious, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. And anxiety is one of the things that would trigger a fit for duty evaluation.
It could.
It could. For you, maybe not high anxiety, but for somebody else that they believe high anxiety, then that's what they could trigger that. Right?
It could.
Okay. Darrell Pastor.
No further questions.
May he be subject to recall? There's some emails that we're looking for that we may need him Wednesday after.
Okay, just, Mr. Gonzalez, would you please just stay in touch with the state in case we need you to come back down here? Are you in the building?
No.
No? Okay.
Still this campus, though.
Okay, thank you. Your email step past. Stay calm.
State calls Troop Ranger Andrew McMillan, Daniel McMillan. Sorry, I was looking at something else. Okay. It's a drop off.
Your Honor, you might be able to agree.
Let me take a 10-minute break.
Receiving high,
the public out of the area. I think there's still some public buildings, I believe, there. They just keep the area secure.
And when you arrived at the Bexar County Constable's Office, Precinct 2, did the constable ultimately arrive?
Yes, sir, she did.
And do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
And how did she arrive to the location?
I believe she arrived in either her personal vehicle or someone else's vehicle.
And that search warrant, was it to, was one of the items listed to be seized her county vehicle?
That's what I was instructed, yes, sir.
Did you overhear a conversation between the constable and other rangers and law enforcement officers?
Yes, sir, I did.
And in that conversation, was she asked to provide her county vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And what was her response when asked about providing her county vehicle that was listed on the search warrant?
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to take the witness on board on this issue. Ranger McMillan, was the constable present at the scene with you in person?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where exactly were you at the time?
In the parking lot in front of the county building.
In the parking lot in front of the county building. Okay, so this was not in front of her home, it was in front of precinct 2.
Yes, sir.
And how far away were you when you heard this?
I don't recall that, sir.
Okay, I mean, as far from me to you or closer?
Probably a little bit closer, but not to hear a conversation.
Okay. And who was she talking to at the time?
She was speaking with Ranger Brent Freeman.
Okay. Your Honor, that concludes more doctrine.
What did she say?
She responded that the tires on her unit had been slashed.
Were you then asked to go to her home, her residence, to retrieve that vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Who asked you and ordered you to go there?
My Lieutenant Valdez, myself, asked myself and Ranger Posca to go to her residence and secure the vehicle.
And did you arrive at the location?
Yes, sir.
And what did you see at the location?
There was her county unit her constable unit was in her driveway of her residence.
Were the tires slashed?
No, sir.
Who was present with you at her residence?
Ranger Posca and Trooper Wilson, I believe.
And first witness, Judge?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 121. You recognize this?
Yes, sir. That's the video we watched of Trooper Wilson's in-car video.
And this video, was that taken at the time of when you were at Constable Vela's residence?
Yes, sir, it was.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of what you saw that day?
Yes, sir, it is.
State moves to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 121 into evidence.
Any objections?
Well, we object to your say on video. This is video with several people talking, including Constable Louis.
Dash cam video? Picks up people talking.
Oh, there's no.
This is the cruiser's video,
Oh.
not
Not mine.
body on cam.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No objection to that.
Okay.
There might be some radio, you might hear radio communications, but
121 is admitted.
Permission published, Judge?
Yes.
So on the screen, Exhibit 121, what do we see?
We are at the constable's residence. You see in the driveway next to the house the constable's marked, or I don't know, marked her constable unit. Myself with in the hat, and Ranger Posca sitting up there standing by the vehicle. And then I believe this is the county unit that the constable arrived to her residence from the county building we had been at earlier.
Okay, so you're the individual in the cowboy hat?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the unit that she stated had slashed tires, the one that's the county unit, that's the one that's up in the driveway?
Yes, sir.
And so the one that's in the bottom portion of the driveway in the street, that's the one that she arrived at the location in?
Yes, sir. What she arrived at the house, at her house. In.
Oh, okay. And so now that this vehicle has been located as a part of the seizure warrant, the search and seizure warrant, what's the next step in securing this evidence?
The next step was to then have that vehicle transported back to the county building.
How would that vehicle be transported?
It was transported by via a wrecker.
A tow truck?
Yes, sir.
Were photos taken of all four tires of the constable's county unit?
I was told that that there were photos taken of her tires.
So what's happening right now in the video?
I believe that's the tow crew moving the vehicle out of the driveway, and they're going to drive it up onto the tow truck.
And based on your observations and what we see on the video, are any of the tires slashed?
No, sir.
And based on your observations at the scene and what we see on the video, was the vehicle operable?
Yes, sir.
Showing the universal register. Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 122, 123, 124, and 125. Do you recognize these images?
Yes, these are the images of the tires, all four tires of the constable's vehicle.
Okay, these are those photos in 122, 123, 124, and 125 very inaccurate depictions of the tires of the constable's county vehicle as they were on the day of the search warrant?
Yes, all inflated and not slashed.
State moves to admit what's been marked as States Exhibit 122, 123, 124, and 125 as evidence.
States 122 through 125 are admitted.
Original published, Judge? This is State's Exhibit 122. Does this tire appear to be slashed, deflated, or inoperable in any way?
No, sir.
This is State's Exhibit 123. Does this tire appear to be deflated, slashed, or inoperable in any way?
No, sir.
This is State's Exhibit 124. Does this tire appear to be deflated, slashed, or inoperable in any way?
No, sir.
And this is State's Exhibit 125. Does this tire appear to be deflated, slashed, or inoperable in any way?
No, sir.
The statement that she made at the scene of the execution of the search warrant in front of the precinct, the Bear County Constable 2 precinct, that her vehicle could not be brought to the location because the tires were slashed, was that a true or false statement?
That was a false statement.
Did that statement in any way impede the investigation or execution of the search warrant that was executed at the precinct in September of 2019?
It required Rangers to go secure the vehicle and a trooper and obtain a record to move that vehicle from her house to the precinct building.
Pass the witness.
So the answer is it didn't impede it. You just went to the house and you got it there instead of getting it somewhere else.
It required other people to move from what they were doing that day to somewhere else.
Sure, but let's talk about that. So you agree that that's an issue for you because that drains your resources, right?
Somebody's got to pay for that tow truck. So
How y'all want to tow it anyway? There's a tow evidence.
if you needed to tow it, we needed to tow it. It is required and cost.
You are going to drive it to the impound.
No, sir.
No, you're going to tow it. Either you're going to tow it from precinct 2 or you're going to tow it from the house.
Oh, I have no idea about precinct 2 after that, sir. I don't know.
Well, I know, but when you just represented in court that it cost that towing was going to happen because that's what happens to cars who are taken as part of search warrants.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
You don't hop somebody in and say, hey, drive this piece of evidence down to the impound. It gets towed because the guy can get in a wreck on the way. You always tow the vehicle.
Not always. Sometimes cars would have been driven.
By Rangers? They hop in and drive the car?
Not by me. I've seen different agencies drive cars to different locations. It has happened.
But you would agree that it's standard to tow any kind of vehicle that's the subject of a search warrant to the impound for a process?
If to be done correctly, I feel like it would need to be towed. Yes, sir.
So none of her actions caused any extra money to tow something because y'all wanted to do it correctly?
I can't answer if it did or didn't on that. It required a cost to do that. I don't know what they were planning on doing if it had been there initially.
I know, Ranger, but you did answer that it did that. You did answer that, and so that was what he tried to pull out of you. And I'm just pointing out that is not the case in almost every situation. I was a prosecutor 10 years. Almost every situation, we've never told them, hey, go jump in the car and drive it down to impound. It gets towed every time. But I understand that you've had some instances you've seen where that hasn't happened. Let's talk about some of the instances you've seen as a ranger. You ever work highway patrol?
Yes, sir.
How long did you work highway patrol?
Approximately 9 years.
All right. I'm assuming you pull a lot of cars over.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you pull cars over where people were driving the car that you thought I would be driving a car in that condition?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Cars without doors on it, or cars with rusty bottoms, or cars that look like that they shouldn't be out on the road, but they may have barely made inspection.
There was plenty of cars that stopped that probably didn't make inspection. Yes, sir.
Right. And they were drivable and operable, right?
Yes, sir.
But now you may not have chosen to drive or operate it, although somebody else, obviously, because you pulled them over, they did choose to drive and operate.
Yes, sir.
All right. And so you would agree that like drivable and operable can, I guess that there's an objective definition, but there's also a subjective definition depending on who the operator is and whether or not they're willing to drive it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that goes to the question that was asked to you is, were the tires slashed? And you said, no, sir. What if I change that question to, was a tire slashed? Would you still say no?
If a tire, one singular tire,
Right.
I didn't see an example of a tire being slashed on a vehicle.
All right. And so that's your testimony here today.
Yes, sir.
And you, when you were there at the scene, either you said you were there with Ranger Pauschka,
Yes, sir.
and one or both of you had a recording device on.
I don't recall that, sir.
Okay. You didn't know that y'all were being recorded at the time, your conversation with you and Ranger Pauschka.
Ranger Pauschka maybe had a recorder on. I don't remember, sir.
Okay. If I played you a portion of that recording, would you recognize it?
Possibly, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, may I play you a portion of that? And I guess we can see in the video and in the pictures that you and Ranger Pauschka, maybe it's Ranger Pauschka, but y'all are standing close enough to each other that you can talk to each other.
Yes, sir.
And so your conversation would be, whoever's wearing a recorder, whatever you're saying to him or he's saying to you would be caught on one of those devices.
Yes, sir.
I think you got to switch it.
Thank you. I thought it was a PowerPoint. I'm like, what's going on with this?
And Your Honor, prior to this question being asked, the state would object to.
That's what she's talking about?
If it's trying to elicit a statement from the defendant, would the state would object to hearsay?
He asked him if it would help him to refresh his recollection.
Well, yes, Your Honor. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out if he can recognize this recording.
He stated that he recalls that Keith Pauschka may have had a recording, yes, but if he's trying to elicit or trying to play a statement from the defendant, the state would object to hearsay.
I'm not trying to play a statement.
That's what she's talking about? It's still driving.
You recognize, I guess, the conversation that was happening?
No, sir.
You don't recognize the voice there?
That's Ranger Pauschka's voice there. I
Okay.
don't know who he's speaking to or when that was or who was around there.
But you were there with Ranger Pauschka?
Yes, sir. But I wasn't around him the entire time. It sounds like they're very close to the tow truck.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have been in the truck at that time. I don't know.
Okay. So at the time, you weren't aware that Ranger Pauschka had seen the tire and seen what she was talking about. She said right here.
Also speculation.
Well, I
Lacks personal knowledge, what Pauschka did or didn't see, what Pauschka speculates about what's happening. Also, that statement that was just played says that's what she said, which is a statement that came from the defendant.
no.
Overall.
What I'm saying is Ranger Pauschka is looking at the tire at the time and saying that's what she's talking about, and then said it's still driving.
I don't know what he was pointing to, sir. Honestly, don't know.
Well, yeah, is he standing? Okay. Yeah, we'll show the video of you and Pauschka standing there next to each other when I'm talking.
Yes, sir. Sure. Could you pinpoint where that conversation is being taken place? That would help, sir.
Yes. But while we're waiting on the video, and Your Honor, we may need to we're going to have to download the video to show them. But you would agree with me, as a trooper and as a ranger, I guess as a trooper, obviously you've seen your like in-car dash video.
Yes, sir.
And you know that not just you, but with, a lot of law enforcement, it's pretty common that what you're able to see with your eye is not necessarily reflected on video.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's a common thing.
Yes, sir.
So with these photographs of these tires, I mean, these are photos of tires, but there were two rangers there with their eyes on these tires at the time, right?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree that in your line of work, it comes up because a lot of times there's a dispute, and I don't know if it's happened to you personally, but there will be a dispute, and you'll say, regardless of what the video shows, I know what I saw in person, and what I saw in person trumped kind of the video because of the limitations of video, right?
Yes, the video can't capture everything.
That's
Yes,
right.
sir.
And that would apply to photographs as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because, you know, the point that I'm trying to make is that at the scene, at the time, a ranger with eyes on the tire said that's what she's talking about, and then said it's still drivable, though.
I honestly don't recall that conversation with Ranger Pasca, and I did not inspect those tires
Sure,
to see.
but you heard his voice say it.
Yes, sir.
And you know that it's still drivable, though, means you know that that's in relation to the tire. That's what she's talking about, still drivable, though. That's what he's talking about, is the tire.
I would assume that's what he's talking about. Yes, sir.
And you can assume that it's because he is seeing something with his eye that's not necessarily reflected in the photographs that you just looked at.
It is possible. Yes, sir. Because the photographs don't picture like the tread wear or something like that. Yes, sir.
Like a slash in the tire that he's looking at that doesn't necessarily puncture the tire.
There could be something there. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, because the difference between it is a tire can be slashed and not punctured. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Because there are different levels of rubber, and so the skin of the rubber can be slashed, yet the tire not punctured and not be deflated. You would agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And in talking about going back to drivability, somebody could make a determination that I don't want to drive it with a slash in the skin, right?
That could be possible. Yes, sir.
You can make that determination, whereas in another person like Couchman or you or me might say, whatever, I'll drive it. That's fine.
That could happen. Yes, sir.
And so and I guess where I'm trying to bring this back to is it's not like I'm not off in fairyland. They actually have Couchman pointing out what he can see with his eyes, saying, "Oh, that's what she's talking about. It's still drivable, right?" I mean, you heard that.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jason, what vantage point are you trying? Because we already have earned copies. Are you?
We're trying to get the video that shows.
On body cam?
Right.
Can you finish up with this witness, please?
What?
Can we finish this witness?
Yeah, we were just making sure they don't have to download the video. We have the copy for that.
Yeah, and honestly, if we can just offer this in to show his vantage point, I don't really need to play it for him and ask him about it. It'll be self-evident to the court.
What's the number?
I guess it's a state's exhibit, so just as long as the
126.
yeah, 126. We'll show it to the court with the sound off, and as long as the court doesn't listen to it, I guess that's usually.
Actually, you need the sound if you want to make the point you're trying to make,
I
right?
guess listen to all the other stuff.
I think it needs to be in context. I would prefer that the entire thing be admitted into evidence because I disagree with his interpretation of what was said. I've heard this video numerous times.
Optional completeness at this point.
I mean, that's honestly, that's fine, Judge. I don't mind.
So 126 is, you want it to be admitted?
Yes, Your Honor. We'll offer it. Yeah, we'll offer it with no limitation.
It's marked as states 126 is admitted.
I don't have anything for that.
Anything else, redirect?
Judge, will you be listening to that yourself? Will you be watching? Okay.
No other questions, Judge?
Make sure you put the exhibit up here with the rest of the evidence.
I'm sorry, Judge. My co-counsel has brought to my attention that I don't know. I guess you said you reviewed some video, the dash cam.
Yes, sir.
In fact, when she was on the scene, she actually pointed to that one tire and said, that tire is slashed. She didn't say tires, she said that tire. Do you remember
Objection
that?
calls for hearsay.
I'm asking if you remember that happened.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I don't recall that happening, sir. No, sir.
Okay, but if it's on the video, you wouldn't dispute it.
You'd have to play the hear everything, yes, sir.
Sure, now, and I'll take your answer, which is you don't remember, but if it was on the video, and that was that, the video speaks for itself.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Judge, I don't have anything further. Thank you. You can go.
May he step down?
Yeah, no further question, you say.
Thank you, Ranger. You did step down.
Thank you.
My name is Sylvia.
Just a quick evidentiary matter, Judge, on State's Exhibit 121, the only portion that we intended to admit was camera 2. I don't know, we'll just redact that, just to make sure that the other stuff comes in, or I don't know.
It's fine. I mean, Your Honor, at this point, I think that on stuff like that, if you know what was in evidence and you want to review it again.
It's camera 2. I made a notation.
Okay.
Right. So I just, we trust that the court will just look at camera 2 and not have to worry about redaction.
Who's your next witness?
State calls.
Your Honor, before we do that, can we approach?
Yeah.
Deputy Garcia, you were previously sworn. You remain under the same oath. State, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Deputy Garcia, could you introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Garcia, Johnny Garcia, Public Information Officer with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
And as a public information officer for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, what are your job duties?
Manage internal, external communications for the entire Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been in that position?
Since 2018.
Since 2018?
Yes, sir, since February of 2018.
And how long have you been with the Sheriff's Office?
Since November of 2008.
And are you familiar with the policies and procedures of what are known as perp walks?
Yes, sir.
And what are those?
Well, it varies from agency to agency. However, typically a perp walk is a suspect that was arrested by law enforcement, depending on their particular charges. It is newsworthy depending on those charges. And in that case, that individual is brought before the media so they can be shown. There's also a reasoning to that for transparency purposes as well. It serves a multitude of reasons depending on the specific charge. In certain cases, for sexual assault, we want any other victims that might be out there, especially for murder suspects that are arrested. There is specific reasonings for those perp walks.
In April of 2019, were you informed of a perp walk that was to be done by the Bexar County Constable Precinct 2 office?
I wasn't notified by their office specifically. I received a call after hours that from a local news agency asking if the Bexar County Sheriff's Office was going to be hosting a perp walk at the Justice Intake Center. I informed that person calling that the Bexar County Sheriff's Office was not. And then I began asking, well, who in fact is hosting this perp walk, which I was then informed the Precinct 2 Constable's office was going to be hosting a perp walk without my knowledge there at the Justice Intake Center.
And then did you reach out to the constable of the Precinct 2?
I did. I began trying to call different numbers, just trying to get some more information on what was actually occurring there in an effort to get a grasp of what individual they were perp walking, where they were doing it specifically. So after calling several numbers, I was actually able to get a hold of the former constable at that point in time, at which point I began asking those questions. Where were they hosting the perp walk? They informed me they were doing it inside the Sally Port. And at that point, I informed her that in an effort to prevent any mishandling of that perp walk, just for the fact that that particular area is an area where multiple agencies bring in arrested individuals. You don't want anything to be mishandled in that particular area, just in the event that a suspect wants to escape for things of that nature. So at that point, I informed them it'd be best if they were able to do the perp walk just outside of the secured area to prevent any mishandling.
And when you were speaking to the constable, was that Michelle Barrientes Vela?
Yes, sir.
At that time, were you made aware that the deputy constables were already at the location at the jail?
I believe, I don't remember the specific of if they were en route to the South Tower, if they were already there, but I asked if she was able to put me in contact with anybody specifically, or if she was able to relay that information. I believe she gave me a number for her captain at that point, former captain, Mark Garcia. I attempted to get in contact with him, couldn't get in contact, called her back. and then she was able to arrange the phone call for him to answer. I relayed the same information to him if they were able to relocate that perp walk just outside of the Justice Intake Center, and I believe that was the last phone call I had with him.
Did you at any point instruct the constable or any of her employees to delay the booking and magistration of Leo Moreno, the arrested person?
No, sir.
Did you at any point tell them to park underneath the bridge at, I think it's Comal Street, or what street is that?
I believe it's Commerce and Comal.
Did you ever tell them to park under there?
No, sir.
And would you ever tell anyone to park under there and transport an arrested person across the street?
I wouldn't see any reason to. As I believe I mentioned in my report, there's been several instances where other outside agencies have held a perp walk right outside the front curb of the Justice Intake Center. And with that being said, that was my advice, to just carry that normal practice. There's a barrier to where the public and the interior of the facility meet that would create a noticeable barrier for media to stop, which was the reason that advice was given to the Precinct 2 Constable's office.
And then at the jail facility over on Comal Street, is there video and surveillance?
There is there's full facility video inside of the Sally Port, in also in the exterior areas of the Sally Port as well.
And have you had an opportunity prior to testimony to view that surveillance video?
I did. There was open records requests that came in for that specific video, unknowing that what actually occurred during that time leading up to the perp walk. They were just asking for the video. Then I was informed that the arrested individual was actually delayed in being transported to that to the magistrate's office. So that was the way I became aware of that video.
Member of the witness, Judge?
Yes.
Showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 127. Do you recognize this bit?
If that's the video that was released, or the CD.
Is this the video of the surveillance video that's inside the Sally Port and outside the jail over on Comal Street?
If it is, any documents, video, surveillance that is recorded and retained by the Bexar County Sheriff's Office is released through the open records section. So I myself don't release that information, but I tend to facilitate making sure that that request gets over to the open records section. So if that is the video, then
State moves to admit what's been marked as 127 into evidence.
Case 127 is admitted.
Version published, Judge?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell the court what we're looking at right now?
you're looking at the rear entrance to the South Tower Justice Intake Center, just a little bit west of the train tracks.
And I'm pausing the video at 16 seconds. What do we see right now?
Precinct 2 Constable deputy's vehicle approaching the keypad to gain entry into the South Tower.
I think this is also known as the Jaya facility?
Correct, yes, sir.
And then in order to gain entry, who lets that constable?
We have deputies that man the master control section of the jail, which allows and provides access into the secured areas of the facility.
And so if you were taking an arrested person into this area, would you now officially be inside the jail?
Not necessarily.
Okay. But there's a way to get inside the jail
Correct.
from
Yes, sir.
inside that area?
There's doors that lead into a vestibule that then take you into the booking area of the jail.
And that booking area, is that where people get processed?
Correct, yes, sir.
And so I'm going to stop it at about 1 minute, 6 seconds. Looks like the vehicle's now gone inside the area, and we call that the Sally Port.
Yes, sir.
So just for time's sake, we're going to fast forward. And this video is 28 minutes long. So right now we're at 12:18. So could you explain to the court, this way, we see an arrow pointing towards the Sally Port. How would you get out of this area?
That is the entrance. It's kind of a one-way only. You go in that entrance, and then there's another exit on the other side, which would be the front of the facility.
Okay. So we see a vehicle passing on the video. Do you know what vehicle that is?
Looks like the exact same vehicle that just entered, but unknown if it is.
It's a constable vehicle?
Yes, sir. Precinct 2 Constable vehicle.
Now that vehicle at 1330 is located where?
Just outside of the Sally Port entrance.
So we're fast forwarding. So we're at 2320. We still see that vehicle parked.
Yes, sir.
And then the train tracks back there. This is the Sally Port entrance.
Yes, sir.
And so earlier we stopped the vehicle at around 13 minutes, and now we're at about 23 minutes. Where's that vehicle going now?
Looks like it's traveling away from the entrance of the South Tower.
And then that'll be the conclusion of this video, which is 28 minutes long. So we're playing the second video, which is in the series of 4. So what are we looking at?
Now you're looking at the interior of the Sally Port. As you can see, those doors to the far right with the windows, that is where you enter into the secure facility. This is where arresting agencies who bring their prisoners enter to then walk them inside.
Okay, so an arrested person, they're going to be taken to the South Tower to GIA. Is it GIA or JIA? We've had a debate over the DA's office about
I think we say G as well.
Okay, GIA, okay. So GIA, you come in through this entrance, park at one of these parking spots, and then take the arrested person to get processed through those doors?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we're at about 55 seconds. We see a vehicle enter. What vehicle is that?
The precinct 2 constable vehicle.
And what are they doing now at about 1 minute and 5 seconds?
Looks like they're parking.
And so,
Oscars, I mean, can I watch these on my own time? I'm very familiar with
Okay.
this location and how it works. I've toured it. I'm very familiar with it.
okay,
I mean, is there any reason I can't do this on my own?
no, that's fine.
All right, do you pass? Or do you have more questions? not
I
related
do
to the video?
briefly, Judge.
Okay, let's get to this.
Okay. You spoke about that at some point after the arrest and all this, there were discussions within the media that the booking and magistration had been delayed. Did you receive any calls from the constable precinct office about what you had told them?
No, my communication was with the former constable at that time, who then put me in contact with the former captain. I ensured that our booking staff was aware of what was about to happen, and informed them that there would be some sort of perk walk outside of the front of the Justice Intake Center. They were fully aware. They had made themselves available for this. So they were able to keep media outside of the lobby area as they would bring precinct 2 constable's office would bring in their prisoner. I think I may have told the lieutenant at that time of the booking section, just notify me when everything's done, just so we're past that situation. As far as the minute by minute of what was transpiring during that time, I was not in communication with the precinct 2 constable's office.
And the actual perk walk takes the arrested person into the lobby of the South Tower facility?
Well, after seeing the video and I think seeing the news coverage that day, that's when I learned they actually parked underneath the Commerce Street Bridge, where they walked their prisoner over to the lobby of the Justice Intake Center.
So the court just saw video of the constable precinct 2 officers entering into the Sally Port and then subsequently leaving that facility. And then in those videos we see the arrested person being escorted from the constable precinct 2 vehicle, which had been parked under the Commerce Street Bridge. While the precinct 2 vehicle was inside the Sally Port, did you ever tell them to leave the facility and park under the bridge to perform the perk walk?
No, I informed the former captain at that time if he was able to relay to his officers, because I believe he mentioned to me that he wasn't there on scene at the Sally Port himself. So I gave him very simple instructions and advice. Just have them exit. As you can see, there was an exit door there at in the Sally Port. You would literally exit, take an immediate right, and that would put you at the front of the Justice Intake Center. Obviously, whatever they did during that time was out of my knowledge, but I felt I gave simple, very basic instructions. Then whatever occurred after that occurred.
That's what it should.
I'm sorry, Deputy, I didn't get your rank. Are you?
Deputy.
Deputy.
Yes, sir.
And you are the PIO?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been PIO?
Going on 4 years now.
So you became PIO under Salazar.
Yes, sir.
What were you before that?
Patrol deputy.
And did you go through an application process to be PIO, or were you just kind of told, like, you're going to be the guy now?
It was interim basis, I would say a special assignment prior to taking that position. I did attend multiple conferences and training conferences to learn the ways of being a public information officer. I informed him of that training. At that point in time, I think the agency was in dire need of a public information officer, so it set me up for the current position I'm in.
So you talked about like policies and procedures of perp walks. So is that like actually in a manual, like policy and procedure? Is that more like just this is how we do it?
Normal practice.
Normal practice. Okay. But the fact that you have a normal practice means that perp walks are a normal practice.
For our agency.
And for SAPD.
Not familiar with their policies or practices, but as far as for the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I mentioned it a few times, but I mean, if you watch the news, you'll see SAPD perp walking people all the time, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've seen that before.
Yes.
It happens relatively frequently.
Yes.
Okay. And, you know, one of the things I think that you said was, you talked about, like, maybe a different agency doing a perp walk at the county jail. That's happened before, though. Different agencies have asked to do perp walks at the county jail.
To my knowledge, not inside of the Sally Port.
Oh, yeah, definitely not inside the Sally Port. I agree with you, because Sally Port's really a secure area, right? You don't want, you know, I couldn't walk up to that Sally Port and say, hi, you know, let me in the Sally Port. They wouldn't open the door for me.
Correct.
Right. But maybe everybody doesn't know that, right? And so that's one of the reasons you would be responsible for telling people who aren't DCSO, like, hey, we don't do it in here, we do it out here, right?
Which was what I informed them of on the phone call.
Yeah, I mean, because one of the things, because I wrote down how you said it, you said that you specifically said, leave the Sally Port and go around to the front, I guess, we call it by the flagpole, but basically the front of Gia, right?
Yes, sir.
And when I say by the flagpoles, because there's some flagpoles up there at the front, and that road is actually open. I know the court understands what I'm talking about, but the road is actually open up until the point where you get to like a big old imposing gate that has been constructed, right?
I'm not familiar where you're talking about exactly.
In front of Gia.
Okay.
Let's say I'm standing and I just walked out of the you know, where the metal detectors are in Gia, and I'm looking across at the parking garage, right?
Yes, sir.
To my right, there's a big old gate now that's been constructed.
Yes, sir.
And that whole area over there is a secured area now.
As far as it limits public commute into the jail facility area.
Right. Because when I was a younger defense attorney and I would visit clients in jail before, I used to be able to drive or walk all the way up to the front of
Yes, sir.
the main jail. And now you can't do that.
Correct.
Okay. But that area in front of Gia that we're talking about is open for people, anyone, including officers, but also people, members of the public, to drive up and like pick somebody up and come out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now that we're centered on that, and from your, going back to what you talked about, basically you had heard from another source, maybe media, you said, you heard like, hey, there's going to be a perp walk, somebody's doing it in front of Gia, right?
Inside of the Sally Port.
And at you had heard that they're going to do it at the Sally Port?
Yes.
So you had heard that, I get it. So from what your understanding was from the media, is they were like, hey, they're saying we're going to do the perp walk at the Sally Port. And you were like, no, that's not what's going to happen.
As I mentioned, in an effort to prevent any mishandling, that was the main reasoning to it. Not for the fact of another agency doing it in our facility, more so for nothing being mishandled at that particular time.
Yeah, no, I mean, Like, I totally agree with you that perp walks and sally ports are a bad idea, because you're right, there's other officers coming in with other defendants or other suspects, other people that are arrested, and if you have a bunch of news crew around there, that can get very confusing, and now you have an open door.
Unless it's controlled.
Unless it's controlled. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, but at this point, and it's important that your understanding was that the perp walk would be done, your understanding of the information you got was that there was going to be a perp walk in the Sally Port, and then it seems like it was important to you to try to locate the agency that was going to do it and to tell them that they shouldn't do it there, they should do it, this is the normal process to do it. Is that right?
It was preferred.
This is the preferred process. So it was you who wanted them to exit out of the Sally Port.
It was the advice given.
Right. But it was because you were saying like, no, go out, go to the front, and then walk them through the front.
At that particular time, yes. Could they have not listened to my recommendations? Of course they could. It was their prisoner. If they wanted to say, sorry, no, we're just going to walk him into the Sally Port after immediately arriving into the Sally Port, that could have been done so as well.
I understand. And I know what their theory is of that, and I don't know if they've told you their theory, but I guess what I'm more concerned about is that you have an agency, that's a smaller agency, and all agencies in Bexar County would bring their prisoners to you. I say to you, but to Bexar County Jail, right?
Certain municipalities.
Right. I mean, because we have constable precincts. We have about 4 of them, I guess, and we have and anybody that they arrest, they would take to Bexar County Jail, right?
Yes, sir.
Then anybody, I guess, I mean, even SAPD, I guess, eventually they get to Bexar County Jail as well.
Yes, sir.
Because the Bexar County Jail is the place to hold people that are arrested, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the smaller agencies, by definition, have less arrests than BCSO or SAPD. Do you agree with that?
As far as the frequency of them going to the jail, that's a possibility. I don't know the specific on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think anybody who lives here knows that SAPD goes there in leech of numbers every day.
Yes, sir.
And, maybe Leon Valley PD is not taking prisoners to the jail at the same rate as BCSO officers arrested.
Possibly.
Right. I mean, that just makes sense because of the sheer size of the agency.
Yes, sir.
And so you would agree, too, that when BCSO does perp walks, that's not a huge percentage of the arrests that BCSO makes.
No, sir.
And from what you know about, because you would know, you have a general idea of how many prisoners are coming in or how many suspects are coming into the jail at any given time. You have a general idea about it, right? And jail numbers are important to your boss, to Javier Salazar, and it's important to the Commissioner's Court and everybody else.
And the community as well.
And the community. And so that's why you would have that information. I'm not going to get you on specific,
Yeah.
but you just know that that there are a lot of people that come into the jail, but there's not a whole lot of perp walks from SAPD, BCSO, or anybody.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not surprising that maybe the policies and the procedures of how that is done at the jail is not widely known, or there's officers who have never had to do it before.
Correct.
So, in an agency like Precinct 2, and I'll just tell you, they had Officer Castellon testify that all that time that he was going around and doing the stuff and it was gone and come back, that he was lost. He didn't know where he was going. That's what he said. He said nobody told him to do that. He just couldn't find his way back to the flagpole. Now, that's what he testified to in court. And I'm not saying anything because what you said is look, exit out, flagpole right there, that's where you go to do a perp walk. And that was basically the sum total of your advice. And please don't do it in the South. Please do that. But from your understanding that the perp walk was planned the entire time, it was just planned to be inside the Sally Port, which is where you did not want it to be.
Where the advice was given to just simply redirect and relocate their perp walk.
And you wouldn't fault anybody for following your advice because you're the public information officer for Bexar County. And it's y'all's facility.
If they took it upon themselves to do otherwise than that, that was their decision, not mine.
So I guess you answered my question in reverse, but I'm going to reverse it back around and say, you gave that advice, and you are a person with authority and with knowledge about the functions and the workings of GIA and the Bear County Detention Center.
Yes, sir.
And so if you gave that advice and said, hey, y'all do this instead of this, you wouldn't fault anybody from a different agency that wasn't you from saying, we'll listen to him and do what he said for us to do.
Correct.
I mean, and so then it comes down to, like, it's not your fault the guy got lost or he didn't know where he was going. And he ended up driving, like 3 miles out of the way just to get back around. And nobody's suggesting that you ever told the guy to get lost, or not, or to delay. But at the time, you agree that, like, that road out there is, like, jacked up, like all the construction that's going on outside that jail, on that road that runs alongside of GIA. Like,
I don't remember the specific construction at that time.
well, it is like that now, right?
Correct, yes,
You
sir.
know that now. And I'll just say, I've had to go visit clients, and I have to do a lot of weird loops just to get to that parking garage sometimes because they shut the road down and they shut it off. The prosecutor asked you that, the prosecutor said, well, did you tell him to go park in front of the bridge, right, or under the bridge? And that is obviously not the place you would tell him to park, right?
No, sir.
Okay. That's where the bonds people have their parking, and for a long time, that's where a lot of homeless people live, is over there in the bridge.
Correct.
In that area. So, but Officer Cassidy testified that he just didn't know where he was going, so he finally just parked, so that he could just find him, just park it there. I just want you to know that there's nobody that made a claim that you told him to go over the bridge. He said himself that he just decided to stop his car because he didn't know where he was going.
Okay.
Now, you would agree with me, though, that that bridge where he parked, it's basically, like, you can see the flagpole from that area. You can see the front of GIA from that area.
Yes, sir.
And it really would have just taken like a little L shape around. He would have been, that was the location that you wanted him to be, or you told him, you advised him to be, because that was the typical location for perp walks for agencies who bring their arrested people there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you called, you said you spoke to the constable herself, and then she put you in touch with Mark Garcia.
Yes, sir.
And then you asked him to get in touch with the people that are bringing the prisoner in and let them know what you're telling them, right?
Correct.
Okay. So it was you that said, look, contact these people and let them know that it's not in the Sally Port, you go to the front of the building, right?
As he was a supervisor over those individuals
Sure.
that were making the transport,
Right.
I entrusted him with that information.
Sure, you don't have their numbers, so you can't, you're not going to call them. But you're saying, hey, get your people and have them go to the right, the advisory spot that I'm advising them to go.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Okay. And then they parked in front of the bridge, and then we saw on the video on the body cam that they didn't even know which door to go into. They kind of did that until one of your people saw and called them in to go do that.
Yes, sir.
So I guess the situation is and nobody's blaming, but I think it's important for us to establish that what you set in motion was leave the Sally Port and come to the front of the building. That's something that you did with your advice to Mark Garcia, right?
Yes, sir.
And nobody blaming you for them getting lost and not knowing where they were going. But you said that they were free to disregard your advice. But you would agree that you are a person that anybody, including me, would assume is in a position of authority about what should go on at GIA.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I think your exact words were, I asked if you were able to relay this information. And by relay, meaning, like, are you able to relay it to the people who were in the, I guess, who were taking the prisoners to the perp walk?
Yes, sir.
And there's like a question, like a perp walk at a county jail is irregular, but I mean, really, smaller agencies just don't regularly do perp walks, but they have done that before. There have been agencies before who have done perp walks at the jail in their time.
Yes, sir.
And I think what you said was, and that's what I tell them too, is go do it since Chia's been in existence. Go to the front and walk them in through that area.
It was another agency that I didn't have contact with at that time, I believe, that had already set something up and did that particular perp walk in the front of the jail, which it seemed very simple practice to me, which the advice was given to Precinct 2 Constable's office.
Sure, and you know, and I would agree with you. But you can understand that if there are agencies, smaller agencies or whatever, that don't necessarily know, that can cause some confusion about where to go and what to do and how to do it.
I believe most agencies know where the Justice Intake Center is and at least the entrance and exit of that facility.
Sure, but I guess what I'm saying is that let's say an officer who's used to just taking in arrested people, they would take them into the salary board. And that's kind of what they would normally do, right?
Yes, sir.
And if they hadn't had any experience doing a perp walk, they may not know that now you don't do it there, you do it right over here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I think the last thing she said is she said, I gave simple instructions, exit, take immediate right, and you're there. But obviously, if the person didn't know, that doesn't have anything to do with you. If they didn't know how to do it, or they got lost, or your instructions got lost in translation about where exactly they need to go, your instructions were to exit the sally port and go to the left.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it.
So generally, the procedure is that if an outside agency were to do a perp walk, that they would contact you in order to make those arrangements?
That would be best. Preferred, yes.
And so you described that you gave simple instructions of exit, take a right, and then park and escort the prisoner to the intake location.
Correct. And that was assuming that the media had already been assembled for them to just immediately conduct that perp walk there on site, not knowing if they were still en route or other specific things of that nature.
Okay, did you ever at any point tell the constable or Mark Garcia, hey, wait until the media shows up, then do the walk into the intake facility?
No, sir.
So these instructions that you had given had already been made with the assumption that the media had already made the location and that there would not be a further delay for the media to show up to then do the booking process.
Correct. It appeared to me at that particular time that, it was possibly minutes away from occurring and that the media was already there. There is, a specific process that we typically do, which is we notify the individuals that handle the doors to open up the doors to allow media to come in. That was another reason why it would have just created a bigger obstacle for that outside agency that doesn't know the specific numbers to call internally to open up those doors. So to prevent all that logistics, that was the reason why they were provided that instruction to just simply go outside of the front of the Justice Intake Center.
Absolutely.
When BCSO officers, deputies are arrested, does Sheriff Salazar call press conferences to let people know?
Objection relevance.
I think it's relevant. They've portrayed that it was to put media attention on this is somehow humiliating or embarrassing to Moreno. I want to ask if that's a pretty standard practice for other law enforcement agencies to do. Does Sheriff Salazar call a press conference when BCSO deputies are arrested or commit crimes?
We have.
And one of the things you talked about on your direct was, and specifically with perp walks, is that transparency is important as well.
Yes, sir.
And one of the reasons you guys will tell the media first that one of our deputies has been arrested is because you want to be transparent with the media and with the public.
Yes, sir.
You don't want to look like you're hiding that this person's been arrested for doing something wrong.
Correct.
So you would say that is a normal practice if somebody is in an agency, a law enforcement agency, and one of their people are arrested for something, to call a press conference or to alert the media that that is happening.
For our agency, yes.
And you don't know that that practice is any, well, I guess, okay, you say for your agency, but the reason for your agency, because your agency is invested in transparency.
Correct.
And you believe that that's the best practice in order to achieve that transparency.
Yes, sir.
Is to notify the public and the media that one of your own officers has been accused of wrongdoing.
Correct.
That's what it is.
No further questions, Judge?
Maybe excuse.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy. You may step down. Did you say that's your last witness for today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you give me the case law you want me to consider, the list?
Oh, yes.
Your Honor, they just handed that to us. We will have a response, I think, but we will need time.
Well, I'm just going to read it right now. Are you telling me not to read it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted you to just read it, understanding that we'll have a rebuttal and maybe other cases.
Okay.
Or in the summary, the way that we may have a difference of opinion of what the whole thing is.
Okay. Sounds good. So the court will take judicial notice of the cases that the state has submitted, which specifically they want me to consider Section 704 of the 1962 Civil Rights Act. Petway, P-E-T-T, W-A-Y, Petway versus American Cast Iron Pipe Company. 3 subsequent cases upholding Petway, and then other circuits finding similarly. So defense, you have a copy of all the cases that I will be considering. And then defense, obviously you'll have a chance to submit any other case law you want me to consider when it comes to the EEOC complaints. So we are going to recess for today. Tomorrow morning, I want to start right at 9. I have a few pleas. I'm going to start at 8:30. Take those first. But we will reconvene at 9. No. My court reporter just gave me the look. So reconvene at 9:30. So I can do the pleas at 9. And then you're going to have 4 or 5?
We have 4 scheduled, but then we have Mark.
Okay, so 4, which was originally planned, right?
Correct.
And then the possibility of Mark Garcia if he
We
signs.
eliminated Les Cameras because we'll hopefully be bringing Mark Garcia.
Okay. So we will reconvene at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you both. Anything else before we go off the record?
No.
Okay. Let's go off the record. Thank you.